Chapter 1. Unfinished Business. The tavern smelled like river mud and old tallow, and the body smelled worse. Aldric set his coroner's satchel on the nearest table, shoved a half-eaten bowl of stew aside with his elbow, and pulled out his ledger. He had done this 47 times since earning his certification at level 1. The work had not grown more glamorous.
System notice. You have entered an active death scene. Coroner's protocol engaged. Unauthorized access to the deceased's character sheet is a level 2 violation.
The blue box hovered at the edge of his vision, bureaucratic and pale, the same way it always did when he crossed a threshold with a body on the other side. He dismissed it, without looking up from his ledger. The dead man was slumped against the back wall of the common room, beneath a mounted fish that had seen better decades. He was 40 or so, rough-dressed, with courier's calluses on both hands and a leather pack beside him, or so Aldric assumed from the impression in the sawdust. He would note that. He noted everything.
Name?
He asked, without turning around.
Don't know it,
said the woman by the bar. She was the one who'd sent the alert. Mira, the tapkeeper, according to the constable's preliminary note. She had steady hands and tired eyes.
He came in just before closing, ordered nothing, sat down, and died. That's the whole story.
You didn't check his pack.
I didn't touch him. I sent for the constable, and I stood right here.
Aldric wrote that down too. Then he crossed the floor and knelt beside the body. Routine. He placed 2 fingers against the dead man's wrist, the standard initiating gesture for a posthumous character sheet review. The skin was cold, had been for at least 2 hours. The blue box appeared before his fingers had even lifted.
Deceased party wishes to transfer quest. The weight of what was carried. Accept, decline.
Aldric stared at it. He declined.
Deceased party wishes to transfer quest. The weight of what was carried. Accept, decline.
He declined again, faster. The way you swat a fly you've already killed once.
Deceased party wishes to transfer quest. The weight of what was carried. Accept, decline.
What in the…
He stood sharply and turned to Mira. She was watching him the way people watch a coroner who's making unusual faces at nothing.
Did this man speak to you at all? Any words before he sat down?
He said the chair looked comfortable. That was it. I thought he was drunk.
Was he carrying anything when he came in?
The pack. He set it down next to him. Heavy by the sound of it.
Aldric looked at the sawdust impression again. Rectangular. Straps. He crouched and measured it with his hand. Bigger than a standard courier's bag. He noted the dimensions. He noted the absence. The door opened and Constable Dorn filled it. Dorn was the kind of man who had been level 8 for 15 years and intended to stay there. He had the comfortable authority of someone who'd stopped growing because there was simply no reason to. He looked at Aldric, looked at the body, looked at the window going gray with early morning.
You done?
Not yet. The sheet is behaving. Unusually.
Sheet's always unusual when there's no next of kin to claim it. Log the skills, close the file, and let me clear this scene before the breakfast crowd.
Constable, the deceased is attempting to transfer a quest.
Dorn's expression didn't change, which meant he was working hard to keep it that way.
Dead people don't assign quests.
This one is trying. 3 prompts since I touched the body.
Glitch. Override it and close the sheet.
Aldric looked at the body. The body looked like a dead man. It had the coloring and the stillness and the smell of a dead man. But somewhere in the deep architecture of the system, something was still running. Something that wanted this quest transferred badly enough to keep asking. He opened his override tools. Level 3 coroners could force terminate a skill tree. Not gracefully, not with ceremony. But the authority existed for exactly this kind of case. Trapped processes, haunted sheets, skills that lingered past their owner. He had used it twice before. Both times the cause had been grief residue, nothing more. Emotional artifacts in the data.
Warning. Manual override of active skill tree. May result in permanent data loss. Proceed.
Yes.
He reached into the dead man's sheet the way you reach into a dark drawer, by feel and by training. The skills were there. Wayfinding at rank 4, endurance at rank 6, something else behind an encryption flag he couldn't read without higher clearance. He began shutting them down node by node, the system's equivalent of closing a man's eyes. The quest prompt did not appear again. For 11 seconds. Then,
You saw what was in the pack. The system notes your level is insufficient to forget this.
Aldric read it twice. It wasn't addressed to him. It wasn't addressed to Dorn or Mira. It wasn't addressed to anyone at all. It simply existed, hovering in the space where the dead man's character sheet had been, attached to nothing, expiring slowly at its edges, the way unanchored messages do. He spun around. The pack was gone. The sawdust impression was still there, sharp and rectangular, undisturbed. The straw near it hadn't shifted. The door hadn't opened. He would have heard it. Dorn was still standing in it. Mira hadn't moved from the bar. Nobody had touched it.
Where is the pack?
What pack?
Coroner. Close the sheet and let's go.
There was a pack. Right there.
He pointed at the impression.
You said he carried it in.
He did. I watched him set it down.
She looked at the floor. Something moved behind her eyes. Not guilt, Aldric decided. Recognition. The look of someone who has just noticed a thing was missing, that they should have noticed missing a long time ago. Aldric crouched over the impression for a long moment. 4 inches deep on the left side, 2 on the right. Whatever had been inside was heavier toward the bottom. He pressed his palm flat against the sawdust and felt nothing. No warmth, no residue, no trace the system would accept as evidence. He stood. He looked at the dead man's face, a face that had delivered messages and slept rough and eaten trail food, and at some point in the last few hours had decided, or been made, to stop. A face that was asking him for something even now, through channels that should have gone dark.
Did anyone come in tonight before he arrived? Anyone waiting? Anyone who left quickly after he sat down?
Just regulars. I know all their faces.
Aldric.
I'm asking a question.
You're delaying. Sheets closed. Scenes clear. I've got a log to file before dawn, and so do you.
Aldric looked at the fading system message. It was almost gone, the letters thinning to pale outlines, the box dissolving back into the ambient architecture of the world. In 10 more seconds there would be no record it had ever appeared. Not in the local logs, not in his coroner's feed. Messages addressed to no one didn't get logged anywhere. That was a rule he had never thought to question until this moment. He wrote down the exact wording from memory. He wrote down the time. He wrote down the dimensions of the impression in the sawdust. He wrote the word insufficient and drew a small box around it, because the system had used it very precisely, and he was a man who had learned, slowly and at some cost, to respect precision. Then he closed his ledger and stood in the gray morning light, and tried to remember whether he had actually seen anything in the pack at all. He had not opened it. He had not touched it. He had noted its existence from across the room, and moved toward the body instead, the way a coroner is trained to do. The system, apparently, disagreed. Outside, the river moved past in the dark, carrying whatever the dark carries, and Aldric put his ledger under his arm and followed Constable Dorn into the street, and did not look back at the empty space on the floor, and thought about it every step of the way home.